Hello. Um. Oh shoot, it's a little loud. My bad. Um. So, hi. Um. I am extremely nervous about doing this, but I'm here. Hello. Um. Hi. Hi, Crexy. Oh, hi, sister. You got this, boo. Thank you. Rain sounds. Ah, yeah. For some reason, even rain sounds can be copyrighted, rain and wind sounds. So I had to find one that was completely uncopyrighted. But I got lucky. Some people do put that stuff online for other people to use, which is really nice. Um, Congrats on Nuggy for getting first. AC, I'm getting third. Oh, thank you for the fall decor. Yeah, I'm gonna change it to winter soon. But I was actually informed recently that officially winter does not start until December 20th. Oh shit! So it starts today. I should probably fix that. I'll fix that soon. Um, Congrats on Crexy for getting second. You're totally second. Um, okay. If you notice that the redeems are actually different for reading streams, instead of, I'll even do one, although you won't be able to redeem it for another 5 minutes, so I'll just do the thing. Um, if you serve me something, it appears on my desk for like 5 minutes. Anyway, I'll take a sip of water. And yeah, since I won't be interacting with chat too much, since this is mostly like a chill stream, to like read and hang out and do your own thing too. Maybe put it on in the background or maybe fall asleep to it. Thank you. But yeah, that way it's a little bit more interactive. Ah. Thank you for the snacks, Grexy. I believe I have some pizza combos. Oh, comfy wear. Okay. I put on the Santa outfit to be festive, but I got you. ASMR crunch. You guys like that? Ta-da. Oh, I'm a little bit too big. I'm too big. There we go. Comfy, comfy. Yeah. They shouldn't disappear for the next 5 minutes while the redeem is on. But I cannot say for sure. I think trigger fire only allows a certain amount of time. Hello, Crexy. Some stuff are still here. Of course, the best ofs, the making me call you a good boy or girl, the banning me from saying something, which I think could be funny depending on the book. Winter's Coming is still there. All the outfit changes, shoutouts, truth or dares. Petting bit the rabbit. Yeah. So I'm hoping that the stream is still very interactive while also still being very peaceful. Hopefully it has sound, or if you turned it off. Oh, it does have sound. I was able to hear it. You didn't hear anything? Oh, okay. I see what the problem was. Okay, hold on.
Hello there.
Did you hear that one? If I have that on, does it sound like there's two rains going on? Like there's their feedback, or is it fine? Because if it sounds like there's two going on, I can fix it. But if not, that's pretty useful. I'll turn it off for now until you answer. But, yes. So, today we will be reading Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales. I put up a poll in my Discord, and that was the most voted, right behind... What was the second most voted? It was The Complete Tales of Edgar Allan Poe. So maybe we'll read that next time. I'm going to also post a screenshot of the poll so people see what won. But yeah. Alright, the blurbs should be good now. Let me just double check. Alright, the petting's not perfect because I'm a little smaller now, but I'll fix it another time. Hey! Okay. Alright, so we will be starting... I knocked over the mic. We'll just be starting this off a little nicely. I do have both chats pulled up right in front of me, so please tell me if I speak too low, if I'm not speaking loud enough, if I'm doing anything wrong, basically. Just let me know. It looks like the first one is The Frog King or Iron Henry. That is the first story. I cannot read some snippets of this book because while all the stories are public domain, the book itself is not. And I just don't want to risk it, honestly. So I will not be reading like the introduction or the about or anything like that. I am just going straight into just the stories. And the introduction is pretty interesting. It's about their lives, their legacy, you know, how they got to write the books that they did. But let's just start with the Frog King and Iron Henry. There are, let me see, hold on. Ooh, that's a lot of stories. No wonder Disney just started ripping them off as much as possible. Oh god, I'm gonna get murdered by Disney now. Hey, you know what? Nah, I'm not popular enough for that. Anyway. Let me know if anything is too loud, if I'm not loud enough. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get started. And I'm gonna push the mic a bit closer because I'm gonna turn off the part of my voice I use to speak loudly. Hopefully it makes like a nicer kind of tone. I'm nervous. Okay. It's fine. It's all fine. The Frog King or Iron Henry. In old times, when wishing still helped one, there lived a king whose daughters were all beautiful, but the youngest was so beautiful that the sun itself which has seen so much, was astonished whenever it shone in her face. Close by the king's castle lay a great dark forest, and under an old lime tree in the forest was a well. And when the day was very warm, the king's child went out into the forest and sat down by the side of the cool fountain, and when she was bored, she took a golden ball and threw it up on high and caught it. And this ball was her favorite plaything. Now it so happened that on one occasion the princess's golden ball did not fall into the little hand which she was holding up for it, but onto the ground beyond and rolled straight into the water. The king's daughter followed it with her eyes, but it vanished, and the well was deep, so deep that the bottom could not be seen. At this she began to cry, and cried louder and louder, and could not be comforted. And as she thus lamented, someone said to her, "What ails you, king's daughter? Your tears would melt a heart of stone." She looked round to the side from where the voice came, and saw a frog stretching forth its thick, ugly head from the water. "Ah, old water splasher, is it you?" said she. "I am weeping for my golden ball, which has fallen into the well." "Be quiet, and do not weep," answered the frog. "I can help you, but what will you give me if I bring your plaything up again?" "Whatever you will have, dear frog," said she, "my clothes, my pearls and jewels, and even the golden crown which I am wearing." The frog answered, "I do not care for your clothes, your pearls and jewels, or your golden crown, but if you will love me, and let me be your companion and playmate, and sit by you at your little table, and eat off your little golden plate, and drink out of your little cup, and sleep in your little bed, if you will promise me this, I will go down below and bring your golden ball up again." "Oh yes," said she, "I promise you all you wish, if you will but bring me back my ball again." She, however, thought, "How the silly frog does talk. He lives in the water with the other frogs and croaks, and can be no companion to any human being." But the frog, when he had received his promise, put his head into the water and sank down, and in a short while came swimming up again with the ball in his mouth, and threw it on the grass. The king's daughter was delighted to see her pretty plaything once more, and picked it up and ran away with it. "Wait, wait," said the frog. "Take me with you. I can't run as you can." But what did it avail him to scream his croak, croak after her as loudly as he could? She did not listen, but ran home and soon forgot the poor frog, who was forced to go back into his well again. The next day she had seated herself at table with the king and all the courtiers, and was eating from her little golden plate. Something came creeping, splish, splish, splash, up the marble staircase, and when it had got to the top, it knocked at the door and cried, "Princess, youngest princess, open the door for me." She ran to see who was outside, but when she opened the door, there sat a frog in front of it. Then she slammed the door, in great haste, sat down to dinner again, and was quite frightened. The king saw plainly that her heart was beating violently, and said, "My child, what are you so afraid of? Is there perchance a giant outside who wants to carry you away?" No," replied she. "It is no giant, but a disgusting frog." "What does a frog want with you?" "Ah, dear father, yesterday as I was in the forest sitting by the well, playing, my golden ball fell into the water, and because I cried so, the frog brought it out again for me, and because he so insisted, I promised him he should be my companion, but I never thought he would be able to come out of his water, and now he is outside there and wants to come into me." In the meantime, it knocked a second time and cried, "Princess, youngest princess, open the door for me. Did you not know what you said to me yesterday by the cool waters of the fountain? Princess, youngest princess, open the door for me." "Then," said the king, "that which you have promised you must perform. Go and let him in." Thank you for the head pat, Snuggie. She went and opened the door, and the frog hopped in and followed her, step by step, to her chair. There he sat and cried, "Lift me up beside you." She delayed, until at last the king commanded her to do it. When the frog was once on the chair, he wanted to be on the table, and when he was on the table, he said, "Now, push your little golden plate nearer to me, that we may eat together." She did this, but it was easy to see that she did not do it willingly. The frog enjoyed what he ate, but almost every mouthful she took choked her. At length he said, "I have eaten, and I am satisfied. Now I am tired. Carry me into your little room and make your little silken bed ready, and we will both lie down and go to sleep." It's relaxed so easy. Thank you, Cruxy. Oh, thank you for the water. Well, for the moon tea. Okay. The king's daughter began to cry, for she was afraid the cold frog, which she did not like to touch, and which was now to sleep in her pretty clean bed. But the king grew angry and said, "He who helped you when you were in trouble ought not to be despised by you afterwards." So she took hold of the frog with 2 fingers, carried him upstairs, and put him in a corner. But when she was in bed, he crept to her and said, "I am tired. I want to sleep as well as you. Lift me up, or I will tell your father." Then she was terribly angry, and took him up and threw him with all her might against the wall. "Now you will be quiet, odious frog," she said. But when he fell down, he was no frog, but a king's son, with beautiful kind eyes. And it came to pass that, with her father's consent, he became her dear companion and husband. He told her how he had been bewitched by a wicked witch, and how no one could have delivered him from the well but herself, and that tomorrow they would go together into his kingdom. Then they went to sleep, and next morning when the sun awoke them, a carriage came driving up the 8 white horses, which had white ostrich feathers on their heads, and were harnessed with golden chains, and behind stood the young king's servant, Faithful Henry. Faithful Henry had been so unhappy when his master was chained into a frog, that he had caused 3 iron bands to be laid around his heart, lest it should burst with grief and sadness. The carriage was to conduct the young king into his kingdom. Faithful Henry helped them both in, and placed himself behind again, and was full of joy because of this deliverance. And when they had driven a part of the way to the king's sons heard a cracking behind him, as if something had broken. So he turned and cried, "Henry, the carriage is breaking." "No, master, it is not the carriage. It is a band from my heart, which was put there in my great pain when you were a frog and imprisoned in the well." Again, and once again, while they were on their way, something cracked, and each time the king thought the carriage was breaking, but it was only the bands, which were springing from the heart of a faithful Henry, because his master was set free and was happy. Snitches get stitches. Hi, Shakai. Welcome in. Oh, that was the end of the first story. Because his master was set free and was happy. That was the end of the first story. Goodness gracious. So, obviously that one was the original Princess and the Frog. I feel like it's weird. Of course, she threw him against a wall and he was just like, yeah, we're gonna get married though. I don't know, he sounds like a masochist. Because he said he was happy. He was like, fuck yeah, she threw me. Anyway, I'm sorry. Alright, story number 2. Cat and Mouse in Partnership. A certain cat had made the acquaintance of a mouse and had said so much to her about the great love and friendship she felt for her, that at length the mouse agreed that they should live and keep house together. "But we must make a provision for winter, or else we shall suffer from hunger," said the cat. "And you, little mouse, cannot venture everywhere, or you will be caught in a trap some day." The good advice was followed, and a pot of fat was brought, but they did not know where to put it. At length, after much consideration, the cat said, "I know no place where it will be stored, or will be better stored than in the church, for no one dares take anything away from there. We will set it beneath the altar, and not touch it until we are really in need of it." So the pot was placed in safety, but it was not long before the cat had a great yearning for it, and said to the mouse, "I want to tell you something, little mouse. My cousin has brought a little son into the world, and has asked me to be godmother. He is white with brown spots, and I am to hold him over the font at the christening. Let me go out today, and you look after the house by yourself." "Yes, yes," answered the mouse. "By all means go. If you get anything very good, think of me. I should like a drop of sweet red christening wine, too." All this, however, was untrue. The cat had no cousin, and had not been asked to be godmother. She went straight to the church, stole the pot of fat, began to lick at it, and licked the top of the fat off. Then she took a walk upon the roofs of the town, looked out for opportunities, and then stretched herself in the sun, and licked her lips whenever she thought of the pot of fat, and not until it was evening did she return home. "Well, here you are again," said the mouse. "No doubt you have had a merry day." "All went off well," answered the cat. "What name did they give the child?" "Top off," said the cat quite coolly. "Top off," cried the mouse. "That is a very odd and uncommon name. Is it a usual one in your family?" "What does it matter?" said the cat. "It is no worse than Crumb Stealer, as your godchildren are called." Before long the cat was seized by another fit of longing. She said to the mouse, "You must do me a favor, and once more manage the house for a day alone. I am again asked to be godmother, and as the child has a white ring around its neck, I cannot refuse." The good mouse consented, but the cat crept behind the town walls to the church and devoured half the pot of fat. "Nothing ever seems so good as what one keeps to oneself," said she, and was quite satisfied with her day's work. When she went home, the mouse inquired, "And what was this child christened?" "Half done," answered the cat. "Half done? What are you saying? I never heard the name in my life. I'll wager anything it is not in the calendar of saints." The cat's mouth soon began to water for some more licking. "All good things go in threes," said she. "I am asked to stand grandmother again. The child is quite black, only it has white paws, but with that exception it has not a single white hair on its whole body, This only happens once every few years. You will let me go, won't you?" "Top off, half done," answered the mouse. "They're such odd names. They make me very thoughtful." "You sit at home," said the cat, "in your dark gray fur coat and long tail, and are filled with fancies. That's because you do not go out in the daytime." During the cat's absence, the mouse cleaned the house and put it in order, but the greedy cat entirely emptied the pot of fat. "When everything is eaten up, one has some peace," she said to herself. And well filled and fat, she did not return home till night. The mouse at once asked what name had been given to the third child. "It will not please you more than the others," said the cat. "He is called All Gone." "All Gone!" cried the mouse. "That is the most suspicious name of all. I have never seen it in print. All Gone! What can it mean?" And she shook her head, curled herself up, and lay down to sleep. From this time forth no one invited the cat to be grandmother, but when the winter had come and there was no longer anything to be found outside, the mouse thought of their provision and said, "Come, cat, we will go to our pot of fat, which we have stored up for ourselves. We shall enjoy that." "Yes," answered the cat, "you will enjoy it as much as you would enjoy sticking that dainty tongue of yours out of the window." They set out on their way, but when they arrived, the pot of fat certainly was still in its place, but it was empty. "Alas!" said the mouse, "now I see what has happened. Now it comes to light. You are a true friend. You have devoured all when you were standing godmother. First top off, then half done, then—" "Will you hold your tongue?" cried the cat. "One more word and I will eat you too. All gone," was already on the poor mouse's lips. Scarcely had she spoken it, for the cat sprang on her, seized her, and swallowed her down. And that is the way of the world. Depressing, but yeah, shit. Story number 3, Our Lady's Child. Near a great forest dwelt a woodcutter with his wife, who had an only child, a little girl 3 years old. They were so poor, however, that they no longer had daily bread, and did not know how to get food for her. One morning the woodcutter went out sorrowfully to his work in the forest, and while he was cutting wood, suddenly there stood before him a tall and beautiful woman with a crown of shining stars on her head, who said to him, this one has religious overtones. "I am the Virgin Mary, mother of the child Jesus. You are poor and needy. Bring your child to me. I will take her with me and be her mother and care for her." The woodcutter obeyed, brought his child, and gave her to the Virgin Mary, who took her up to heaven with her. There the child fared well, ate sugar cakes, and drank sweet milk, and her clothes were of gold, and the little angels played with her. And when she was 14 years of age, the Virgin Mary called her one day and said, "Dear child, I am about to make a long journey, so take into your keeping the keys of the 13 doors of heaven. 12 of these you may open and behold the glory which is within them, but the 13th, to which this little key belongs, is forbidden. Beware of opening it, or you will bring misery on yourself." The girl promised to be obedient, and when the Virgin Mary was gone, she began to examine the dwellings of the kingdom of heaven. Each day she opened one of them, until she had made the round of the 12. In each of them sat one of the apostles, in the midst of a great light, and she rejoiced in all the magnificence and splendor, and the little angels who always accompanied her rejoiced with her. Then the forbidden door alone remained, and she felt a great desire to know what could be hidden behind it, and said to the angels, "I will not quite open it, and I will not go inside it, but I will unlock it so that we can just see a little through the opening." "Oh, no," said the angels, "that would be a sin. The Virgin Mary has forbidden it, and it might easily cause you unhappiness." Then she went silent, but the desire in her heart was not stilled, but gnawed there and tormented her, and let her have no rest. And once the angels had all gone out, she thought, "Now I am quite alone, and I could peep in. If I do it, no one will ever know." She sought out the key, and when she had it in her hand, she put it in the lock, and when she had put it in, she turned it round as well. Then the door sprang open, and she saw there the Trinity sitting in fire and splendor. She stayed there a while, and looked at everything in amazement. Then she touched the light a little with her finger, and her finger became quite golden. Immediately, a great fear fell on her. She shut the door violently and ran away. Her terror, too, would not quit her. Let her do what she might, her heart beat continually and would not be still. The gold, too, stayed on her finger and would not go away, no matter how much she rubbed it and washed it. It was not long before Mary came back from her journey. She called the girl before her and asked to have the keys of heaven back. When the maiden gave her the bunch, the Virgin looked into her eyes and said, "Have you not opened the 13th door also?" "No," she replied. Then she laid her hand on the girl's heart and felt how it beat, and saw right well that she had disobeyed her order and had opened the door. Then she said once again, "Are you certain that you have not done it?" "Yes," said the girl for the second time. Then she perceived the finger which had become golden from touching the fire, and saw well that the child had sinned, and said for the third time, "Have you not done it?" "No," said the girl for the third time. Then said the Virgin Mary, "You have not obeyed me, and besides that you have lied. You are no longer worthy to be in heaven." Then the girl fell into a deep sleep, and when she awoke she lay on the earth below, and in the midst of a wilderness she wanted to cry out, but she could bring forth no sound. She sprang up and wanted to run away, but wherever she turned herself, she was continually held back by thick hedges of thorns, through which she could not break. In the desert in which she was imprisoned, there stood an old hollow tree, and this had to be her dwelling place. Into this she crept when night came, and where she slept. Here, too, she found a shelter from storm and rain, but it was a miserable life, and bitterly did she weep when she remembered how happy she had been in heaven, how the angels had played with her. Roots and wild berry were her only food, and for these she searched as far as she could go. In the autumn she picked up the fallen nuts and leaves and carried them into the hole. The nuts were her food in winter, and when snow and ice came she crept amongst the leaves like a poor little animal, that she might not freeze. Before long her clothes were all torn, and one bit of them after another fell off her. As soon, however, as the sun shone warm again, she went out and sat in front of the tree, and her long hair covered her on all sides like a mantle. Thus she sat year after year, and felt the pain and the misery of the world. One day, when the trees were once more clothed in fresh green, the king of the country was hunting in the forest, and followed a deer. And as it had fled into the thicket which shut in this part of the forest, he got off his horse, tore the bushes asunder, and cut himself a path with his sword. When he had at last forced his way through, he saw a wonderfully beautiful maiden sitting under the tree, and he sat there and was entirely covered with her golden hair down to her very feet. He stood still and looked at her full of surprise. Then he spoke to her and said, "Who are you? Why are you sitting here in the wilderness?" She gave no answer, for she could not open her mouth. The king continued, "Will you go with me to my castle?" Then she just nodded her head a little. The king took her in his arms, carried her to his horse, and rode home with her. And when he reached the royal castle, he caused her to be dressed in beautiful garments, and gave her all things in abundance. Although she could not speak, she was still so beautiful and charming that he began to love her with all his heart, and it was not long before he married her. After a year or so had passed, the queen brought a son into the world. Thereupon the Virgin Mary appeared to her in the night, when she lay alone in her bed, and said, "If you will tell the truth and confess that you did unlock the forbidden door, I will open your mouth and give you back your speech. But if you persevere in your sin and deny obstinately, I will take your newborn child away with me." Hi, Dizzy. Welcome in. Welcome in. How are you? Yeah, I do not like this part of the story. So, not only did she unjustly punish a child for being curious, she's also punishing someone who's gone through years of misery. Completely unnecessarily, and threatening to take away their child because of something they did when they were also a fucking child. I'm sorry. It's an old story. You gotta Gotta adjust some expectations, I guess. But it just seems wildly disproportionate and unjust. Completely and utterly unjust. Yep, yeah, see, you understand, sister. I'm just working for 12 hours. Oh, well, put up your feet. We're having chill reading time in here. I'm sorry you had a tough day at work, but I'm glad that you're home, and I'm glad that you're able to rest for a little while. I will take your newborn child away from me. Then the queen was permitted to answer, but she remained hard and said, "No, I did not open the forbidden door." And the Virgin Mary took the newborn child from her arms and vanished with it, because that is a proportionate response to a child lying. I'm glad I'm home too. Wait, I never left. Oh, you work an at-home job? Oh, that's fucking awesome. Wow, right? Right? I don't know. I feel like Mary is just kind of like a hater. Next morning, when the child was not to be found, it was whispered among the people that the queen was a man-eater and had killed her own child. She heard all this and could say nothing to the contrary. But the king would not believe it, for he loved her so much. When a year had gone by, the queen again bore a son, and in the night the Virgin Mary came again to her and said, "If you will confess that you opened the Mary, can you get the fuck out of here? Can you just, leave this poor woman alone? I feel like she's gone through enough pain and enough torture. For one thing she said as a child. Yeah, she's being stubborn, but so would I. You're being kind of a... Anyway. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm gonna piss off so many people. Oh, God. I think it's a loophole. She didn't open the door, she just unlocked it. This is true. I also think that that's the case. She didn't open the door opened by itself. Yeah, I do, but it sucks because I work late like today. Oh my god, I kind of miss working from home, but the company I worked for was absolute dog shit, so I completely understand. But I am glad you can finally at least lay down, chill out for a bit. If you confess that you opened the forbidden door, I will give you your child back and untie your tongue. But if you continue in sin and deny it, I will take away with me this new child also. I feel like you're sinning by stealing a child. I feel like there's something in there of maybe don't steal children. I feel like stealing children is a bad thing. Then the queen said again, "No, I did not open the forbidden door." And the Virgin took the child out of her arms and away with her to heaven. Next morning, when this child had also disappeared, the people declared quite loudly that the queen had devoured it, and the king's counselors demanded that she be brought to justice. The king, however, loved her so dearly that he would not believe it, and commanded the counselors, under the pain of death, not to say any more about it. The following year, the queen gave birth to a beautiful little daughter, and for the third time, the Virgin Mary appeared to her in the night and said, "Follow me." She took the queen by the hand and led her to heaven, and showed her there her two eldest children, who smiled at her and were playing with the ball of the world. When the queen rejoiced at this, the Virgin Mary said, "Is your heart not yet softened? If you will own that you've opened the forbidden door, I will give you back your two little sons." But for the third time, the queen answered, "No, I did not open the forbidden door." Then the Virgin Mary let her sink down to earth once more, and took from her likewise her third child. There's something about this I really hate. Oh yeah, the kidnapping. Next morning, when the loss was reported abroad, all the people cried loudly, the queen is a man-eater, she must be judged, and the king was no longer able to restrain his counselors. Thereupon a trial was held, and she could not answer and defend herself. She was condemned to be burned alive. The wood was got together, and when she was fast bound to the stake, and the fire began to burn round about her, The hard ice of pride melted. Her heart was moved by repentance, and she thought, if I could but confess before my death that I opened the door. Then her voice came back to her, and she cried out loudly, Yes, Mary, I did it. And straightway rain fell from the sky and extinguished the flames of fire, and a light broke forth above her. The Virgin Mary descended with 2 little sons by her side and the newborn daughter in her arms. She spoke kindly to her and said, He who repents his sin and acknowledges it is forgiven. Then she gave her the 3 children, untied her tongue, and granted her happiness for her whole life, after torturing her for many, 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 many years. I added that last bit. Anyway, that's the end of that story. That story was crazy. You know, a lot of overtoned stories of a certain persuasion are like that. And I feel like the irony is lost on a lot of people who write those stories. Like, I don't know. It's just like, oh, let me torture this woman for decades after she lied once as a child because she was curious. Yes, this is exactly what you should do to a human being. That's not sadistic at all. Again, you know, I'm not taking sides. I'm not saying one's better than the other. Anyway, story number 4. I'm unproblematic. I'm unproblematic. I swear. Alright, story number 4. The story of the youth who went forth to learn what fear was. A certain father had 2 sons, the elder of whom was smart and sensible and could do everything, but the younger was stupid and could neither learn nor understand anything. And when people saw him, they said, There's a fellow who will give his father some trouble. It's fucking rude. When anything had to be done, it was always the elder who was forced to do it. But if his father asked him to fetch anything when it was late, or in the night time, and the way led through the churchyard or any other dismal place, he answered, Oh no, father, I'll not go there. It makes me shudder. For he was afraid. Or when stories were told by the fire at night which made the flesh creep, the listeners sometimes said, Oh, it makes us shudder. The younger sat in a corner and listened with the rest of them, and could not imagine what they could mean. They are always saying, It makes me shudder, it makes me shudder. It does not make me shudder, thought he. That, too, must have been an art of which I understand nothing. Now it came to pass that his father said to him one day, Listen to me. You fellow in the corner there, you are growing tall and strong, and you, too, must learn something by which you can earn your living. Look how your brother works, but you do not even earn your salt. Well, father, he replied, I am quite willing to learn something, indeed. If it could but be managed, I should like to learn how to shudder. I don't understand that at all yet. The elder brother smiled when he heard that, and thought to himself, Good God, what a blockhead that brother of mine is. He will never be good for anything as long as he lives. He who wants to be a sickle must bend himself early. The father sighed and answered him, You shall soon learn what it is to shudder, but you will not earn your bread by that. Soon after this, the sexton came to his house on a visit, and the father bewailed his trouble and told him how his younger son was so backward in every aspect that he knew nothing and learned nothing. Just think, said he. When I asked him how he was going to earn his bread, he actually wanted to learn to shudder. If that be all, replied the sexton, he can learn that with me. Send him to me, and I will soon polish him. The father was glad to do it, for he thought, It will train the boy a little. The sexton therefore took him into the house, and he had to ring the bell. After a day or two, the sexton awoke him at midnight, and bade him arise and go up into the church tower and ring the bell. You shall soon learn what shuddering is, thought he,
and secretly went there before him. And when the boy was up at the top of the tower and turned round and was going to take hold of the bell rope, he saw a white figure standing on the stairs opposite the sounding hole. "Who is there?" cried he, but the figure made no reply. It did not move or stir. "Give an answer," cried the boy, "or take yourself off. You have no business here tonight." The sexton, however, remained standing motionless, that the boy might think he was a ghost. The boy cried a second time, "What do you want here? Speak, if you are an honest fellow, or I will throw you down the steps." The sexton thought, he can't intend to be as bad as his words, uttered no sound, and stood as if he were made of stone. Then the boy called to him for the third time, and as that was also to no avail, he ran against him and pushed the ghost down the stairs, so that it fell down 10 steps and remained lying there in the corner. Thereupon he rang the bell, went home, without saying a word, went to bed and fell asleep. The sexton's wife waited a long time for her husband, but he did not come back. At length she became uneasy, and awakened the boy and asked, "Do you not know where my husband is? He climbed up the tower before you did." "No, I do not know," replied the boy, "but someone was standing by the sounding hole on the other side of the steps, and as he would neither give an answer nor go away, I took him for a scoundrel and threw him down the stairs. Just go there, and you will see if it was he. I should be sorry if it were." The woman ran away and found her husband, who was lying moaning in the corner and had broken his leg. She carried him down, and then with loud screams she hastened to the boy's father. "Your boy," cried she, "has been the cause of a great misfortune. He has thrown my husband down the steps and made him break his leg. Take the good-for-nothing fellow away from our house." The father was terrified and ran there and scolded the boy. "What wicked tricks are these?" said he. "The devil must have put this into your head." "Father," he replied, "do listen to me. I am quite innocent. He was standing there by night like one who was intending to do some evil. I did not know who it was, and I warned him 3 times, either to speak or to go away." "Ah," said the father, "I have nothing but unhappiness with you. Get out of my sight. I will see you no more." "Yes, father, right willingly. Wait only until it is day. Then I will go forth and learn how to shudder, and then I shall, at any rate, understand one art which will support me." "Learn what you will," said the father. "It is all the same to me. Here are 50 tailors for you. Take these and go into the wide world, and tell no one from where you came. And who is your father? For I have reason to be ashamed of you." "Yes, father, it shall be as you will. If you desire nothing more than that, I can easily keep it in mind." When day dawned, therefore, the boy put his 50 tailors into his pocket, and went forth on the great highway, and continually said to himself, "If I could but shudder, if I could but shudder." Then a man approached, who heard this conversation which the youth was holding with himself, and when they had walked a little farther, to where they could see the gallows, the man said to him, "Look, there is the tree where 7 men have married the rope-maker's daughter, and are now learning how to fly. Sit down below it, and wait till night comes, and you will soon learn how to shudder." If that is all that is wanted," answered the youth, "it is easily done. But if I learn how to shudder as fast as that, you shall have my 50 tailors. Just come back to me early in the morning." Then the youth went to the gallows, sat down below it, and waited till evening came. And as he was cold, he lighted himself a fire. But at midnight the wind blew so sharply that in spite of his fire he could not get warm. And as the wind knocked the hanged men against each other, they moved backwards and forwards, he thought to himself, "You shiver below by the fire, but how those up above must freeze and suffer." And as he felt pity for them, he raised the ladder and climbed up, unbound one of them after another, and brought down all 7. Then he stirred the fire, blew it, and set them all round it to warm themselves. But they sat there and did not stir, and the fire caught their clothes. So he said, "Take care, or I will hang you up again." The dead men, however, did not hear, but were quite silent and let their rags go on burning. At this he grew angry and said, "If you will not take care, I cannot help you. I will not be burnt with you." And he hung them up again, each in his turn. Then he sat down by the fire and fell asleep. And the next morning the man came to him and wanted to have the 50 tailors and said, "Well, do you know how to shudder?" "No," answered he. "How was I to get to know? Those fellows up there did not open their mouths and were so stupid that they let the few rags which they had on their bodies get burnt." Then the man saw that he would not get the 50 tailors that day, and went away saying, "One of this kind has never come my way before." The youth likewise went his way, and once more began to mutter to himself, "Ah, if I could but shudder! Ah, if I could but shudder!" A wagoner who was striding behind him heard that and asked, "Who are you?" "I don't know," answered the youth. Then the wagoner asked, "From where do you come?" "I know not." "Who is your father?" "That I may not tell you." "What is it that you are always muttering between your teeth?" "Ah," replied the youth, "I do so wish I could shudder, but no one can teach me how to do it." "Give up your foolish chatter," said the wagoner. "Come, go with me. I will see about a place for you." The youth went with the wagoner, and in the evening arrived at an inn where they wished to pass the night. At the entrance of the room, the youth again said quite loudly, "If I could but shudder, if I could but shudder." The host, who had heard this, laughed and said, "If that is your desire, there ought to be a good opportunity for you here." "Ah, be silent," said the hostess. "So many inquisitive persons have already lost their lives. It would be a pity and a shame if such beautiful eyes as these should never see the daylight again." But the youth said, "However difficult it may be, I will learn it, and for this purpose I have journeyed forth." He let the host have no rest until the latter told him that not far from where he stood a haunted house where anyone could very easily learn what shuddering was, if he would but sleep in it for 3 nights. The king had promised that who would venture should have his daughter as wife, and she was the most beautiful maiden the sun shone on. Great treasures likewise lay in the castle which were guarded by evil spirits, and these treasures would then be freed, and would make a poor man rich enough. Already many men had gone into the castle, but as yet none had come out again. Then the youth went next morning to the king and said if he were allowed, he would watch 3 nights in the haunted castle. Oof. The king looked at him, and as the youth pleased him, he said, "You may ask for 3 things to take you to the castle with you, but they must be things without life." Then he answered, "Then I ask for a fire, a turning lathe, and a cutting board with a knife." The king had these things carried into the castle for him during the day. When the night was drawing near, the youth went up and made himself a bright fire in one of the rooms, placed the cutting board and knife beside it, and seated himself by the turning lathe. "Ah, if I could but shudder," said he, "but I shall not learn it here either." Towards midnight he was about to poke his fire. He was blowing it. Something cried suddenly from one corner, "Ah, meow, how cold we are." "You simpletons," he cried, "what are you crying for? If you are cold, come and take a seat by the fire and warm yourselves." And when he had said that, 2 great black cats came with one tremendous leap, and sat down on each side of him, and looked savagely at him with their fiery eyes. After a short time, when they had warmed themselves, they said, "Comrade, shall we have a game at cards?" "Why not?" he replied, "but just show me your paws." Then they stretched out their claws. "Oh," said he, "what long nails you have! Wait, I must first cut them for you." Thereupon he seized them by their throats, put them on the cutting board, and screwed their feet fast. "I have looked at your fingers," said he, "and my fancy for card-playing has gone." And he struck them dead and threw them out into the water. But when he had made way with these two, and was about to sit down again by his fire, out from every hole and corner came black cats and black dogs, with red-hot chains, and more of them came until he could no longer stir. And they yelled horribly, and got on his fire, and pulled it to pieces, and tried to put it out. He watched them for a while quietly, but at last, when they were going too far, he seized his cutting knife and cried, "Away with ye vermin!" and began to cut them down. Part of them ran away, but the others he killed and threw out into the fish pond. When he came back, he fanned the embers of his fire again and warmed himself, and thus he sat. His eyes would keep open no longer, and he felt a desire to sleep. And he looked around and saw a great bed in the corner. "That is the very thing for me," he said, and got into it. When he was just going to shut his eyes, however, the bed began to move of its own accord, and went over the whole of the castle. "That's right," said he, "but go faster." Then the bed rolled on as if 6 horses were harnessed to it, up and down over thresholds and steps. But suddenly, hop, hop, it turned over upside down, and lay on him like a mountain. But he threw quilts and pillows up in the air, got out and said, "Now, anyone who likes may drive," and lay down by his fire and slept till it was day. In the morning the king came, and when he saw him lying there on the ground, he thought the evil spirits had killed him, and he was dead. Then said he, "After all, it is a pity. He is a handsome man." The youth heard it, got up, and said, "It has not come to that yet." Then the king was astonished, but very glad, and asked how he had fared. "Very well indeed," answered he. "One night is past, the 2 others will get over likewise." Then he went to the innkeeper, who opened his eyes very wide, and said, "I never expected to see you alive again. Have you learned how to shudder yet?" "No," said he, "it is all in vain. If someone would but tell me." The second night he again went up to the old castle, sat down by the fire, and once more began his old song, "If I could but shudder." When midnight came, an uproar and noise of tumbling about was heard. At first it was low, but it grew louder and louder. Then it was quiet for a while, and at length, with a loud scream, half a man came down the chimney and fell before him. "Hullo!" cried he, "another half belongs to this. This is too little." Then the uproar began again. There was a roaring and howling, and the other half fell down likewise. "Wait," said the youth, "I will just blow up the fire a little for you." When he had done that and looked around again, the 2 pieces were joined together, and a frightful man was sitting in his place. "That is no part of our bargain," said the youth. "The bench is mine." The man wanted to push him away. The youth, however, would not allow that, but thrust him off with all of his might, and seated himself again in his own place. Then still more men fell down. One after another they brought 9 dead men's legs and 2 skulls, and set them up, and played at 9 pins with them. The youth also wanted to play, and said, "Can I join you?" "Yes, if you have any money." "Money enough," he replied, "but your balls are not quite round." Then he took the skulls and put them in the lathe, and turned them until they were round. "There, now they will roll better," said he. "Hurrah! Now it goes merrily." He played with them and lost some of his money, but when it struck 12, everything vanished from his sight. He lay down and quietly fell asleep. Next morning the king came to inquire after him. "How has it fared with you this time?" asked he. "I have been playing at 9 pins," he answered, "and have lost a couple of farthings." "Have you not shuddered, then?" What?" said he. "I have made merry. If I didn't but know what it was to shudder." The 3rd night he sat down again on his bench, and said quietly, "If I could but shudder." When it grew late, 6 tall men came in and brought a coffin. Then said he, "Ha, that is certainly my little cousin, who died only a few days ago." And he beckoned with his finger and cried, "Come, little cousin, come." They placed the coffin on the ground, but he went to it and took the lid off, and a dead man lay therein. He felt his face, but it was cold as ice. "Stop," said he, "I will warm you a little." And he went to the fire and warmed his hands and laid it on the dead man's face, but he remained cold. Then he took him out and sat down by the fire and laid him on his breast and rubbed his arms that the blood might circulate again. As this also did no good, he thought to himself, when two people lie in bed together, they warm each other, and carried him to the bed, covered him over, and lay down by him. After a short time the dead man became warm too, and began to move. Then the youth said, "See, little cousin, have I not warmed you?" The dead man, however, got up and cried, "Now I will strangle you." "What?" said he. "Is that the way you thank me? You shall once go into your coffin again." And he took him up, threw him into it, and shut the lid. Then came the 6 men and carried him away again. "I cannot manage to shudder," said he. "I shall never learn it here as long as I live." Then a man entered who was taller than all the others and looked terrible. He was old, however, and had a long white beard. "You wretch," cried he, "you shall soon learn what it is to shudder, for you shall die." "Not so fast," replied the youth. "If I am to die, I shall have to have a say in it." "I will soon seize you," said the fiend. "Softly, softly, do not talk so big. I am as strong as you are, and perhaps even stronger." "We shall see," said the old man. "If you are stronger, I will let you go. Come, we will try." Then he led him by dark passages to a smith's forge, took an axe, and with one blow struck an anvil into the ground. "I can do better than that," said the youth, and went to the other anvil. The old man placed himself near and wanted to look on, and his white beard hung down. Then the youth seized the axe, split the anvil with one blow, and struck the old man's beard in with it. "Now I have you," said the youth. "Now it is you who will have to die." Then he seized an iron bar and beat the old man till he moaned and entreated him to stop. And he would give him great riches. The youth drew out the axe and let him go. The old man led him back into the castle, and in a cellar showed him 3 chests of gold. "Of these," said he, "one part is for the poor, the other for the king, and the third is yours." In the meantime it struck 12, and the spirit disappeared. The youth therefore was left in darkness. "I shall still be able to find my way out," said he, and felt about, found the way into the room, and slept there by his fire. The next morning the king came. "Now you must have learned what shuddering is." "No," he answered. "What can it be?" "My dead cousin was here, and a bearded man came and showed me a great deal of money down below, but no one told me what it was to shudder." "Then," said the king, "you have delivered the castle from enchantment, and shall marry my daughter." "That is all very well," said he, "but still I do not know what it is to shudder." Then the gold was brought up, and the wedding celebrated, but however much the young king loved his wife, and however happy he was, he still always said, "If I could but shudder, if I could but shudder." And at last she was angry by this. Her waiting maid said, "I will find a cure for him. He shall soon learn what it is to shudder." She went out to the stream which flowed through the garden, and had a whole bucket full of gudgeons brought to her. At night, when the young king was sleeping, his wife was to draw the clothes off him, and empty the bucket full of water with the gudgeons in it over him, so the little fishes would sprawl about. When this was done, he woke up and cried, "Oh, what makes me shudder so? What makes me shudder so, dear wife? Ah! Now I know what it is to shudder." Epic. Fucking epic. I knew the wife would do it. Yeah, the wife was just like, "Alright, just make him, like, get cold." Everyone else failed. The wife knew what to do. The wife and her waiting maid. Story number 5. The Wolf and the 7 Little Kids. There was once upon a time an old goat who had 7 little kids and loved them with all of the love of a mother for her children. One day she wanted to go into the forest and fetch some food, so she called all 7 to her and said, "Dear children, I have to go into the forest. Be on your guard against the wolf. If he comes in, he will devour you all, skin, hair, and all. The wretch often disguises himself, but you will know him at once by his rough voice and his black feet." The kid said, "Dear mother, we will take good care of ourselves. You may go away without any anxiety." Then the old one bleated and went on her way with an easy mind. It was not long before someone knocked on the door and called, "Open the door, dear children. Your mother is here and has brought something back with her for each of you." But the little kids knew that it was the wolf by the rough voice. "We will not open the door," cried they. "You are not our mother. She has a soft, pleasant voice. But your voice is rough. You are the wolf." Then the wolf went away to a shopkeeper and bought himself a great lump of chalk, ate this, and made his voice soft with it. Then he came back, knocked on the door of the house, and cried, "Open the door, dear children. Your mother is here and has brought something back with her for each of you." But the wolf had laid his black paws against the window, and the children saw them and cried, "We will not open the door. Our mother has not black feet like you. You are the wolf." Then the wolf ran to a baker and said, "I have hurt my feet. Rub some dough over them for me." And when the baker had rubbed his feet over, he ran to the miller and said, "Strew some white meal over my feet for me." The miller thought to himself, "The wolf wants to deceive someone," and refused. But the wolf said, "If you will not do it, I will devour you." Then the miller was afraid and made his paws white for him. Yes, that's how people are. That is an actual line in the book. That was not me. That's crazy. So now the wretch went for the third time to the door, knocked at it, and said, "Open the door for me, children. Your dear little mother has come home and has brought every one of you something back from the forest with her." The little kids cried, "First show us your paws, that we may know if you are our dear little mother." Then he put his paws in through the window, and when the kids saw that they were white, they believed that all he said was true and opened the door. But who should come in but the wolf? They were terrified and wanted to hide themselves. One sprang under the table, the second into the bed, the third into the stove, the fourth into the kitchen, the fifth into the cupboard, the sixth into the washing bowl, and the seventh into the clock case. But the wolf found them all, and used no great ceremony. One after the other he swallowed them down his throat. The youngest, who was in the clock case, was the only one he did not find. When the wolf had satisfied his appetite, he took himself off, laid himself down under a tree in the green meadow outside, and began to sleep. Soon afterwards the old goat came home from the forest. Ah, what a sight she saw there! The door stood open wide. The tables, chairs, and benches were thrown down. The washing bowl lay broken to pieces, and the quilts and pillows were pulled off the bed. She sought her children, but they were nowhere to be found. She called them one after another by name, but no one answered. At last, when she came to the youngest, a soft voice cried, "Dear mother, I am in the clock case." She took the kid out, and it told her that the wolf had come and had eaten all the others. Then you may imagine how she wept over her poor children. At length, in her grief, she went out, and the youngest kid ran with her. When they came to the meadow, there the wolf lay by the tree, and snored so loud that the branches shook. She looked at him on every side and saw that something was moving and struggling in his gorged belly. "Ah, heavens," said she. "Is it possible that my poor children, whom he has swallowed down for his supper, can still be alive?" Then the kid had to run home and fetch scissors and a needle and thread. And the goat cut open the monster's stomach, and hardly had she made one cut, than one little kid thrust its head out. And when she cut farther, all six sprang out one after another, and were all still alive, and had suffered no injury whatever, for in all his greediness the monster had swallowed them down whole. What rejoicing there was! They embraced their dear mother, and jumped like a sailor at his wedding. The mother, however, said, "Now go, and look for some big stones, and we will fill the wicked beast's stomach with them while he is asleep." Then the 7 kids dragged the stones there with all the speed and put as many of them into his stomach as they could get in. And the mother sewed him up again in the greatest haste, so that he was not aware of anything and never once stirred. When the wolf at length had his sleep out, he got on his legs, and as the stones in his stomach made him very thirsty, he wanted to go to a well to drink. But then he began to walk and move about. The stones in his stomach knocked against each other and rattled. Then cried he, "What rumbles and tumbles against my poor bones? I thought 'twas 6 kids, but it's naught but big stones." And when he got to the well and stooped over the water and was just about to drink, the heavy stones made him fall in, and there was no help, but he had to drown miserably. When the 7 kids saw that, they came running to the spot and cried aloud, "The wolf is dead, the wolf is dead," and danced for joy around the well with their mother. I've been reading for about an hour. I will read one more story. Story 6. Oh, the story, chew your food. Honestly, I think that might have been the actual moral of the story. That and don't open the door to strangers. Story 6. Faithful John. There was once upon a time an old king who was ill and thought to himself, "I am lying on what must be my deathbed." Then said he, "Tell Faithful John to come to me." Faithful John was his favorite servant, and was so called because he had for his whole life long been so true to him. Therefore, when he came beside the bed, the king said to him, "Most faithful John, I feel my end approaching, and I have no anxiety except about my son. He is still of tender age and cannot always know how to guide himself. If you do not promise me to teach him everything that he ought to know and to be his foster father, I cannot close my eyes in peace." Then answered Faithful John, "I will not forsake him, and I will serve him with fidelity even if it should cost me my life." At this, the old king said, "Now I die in comfort and peace." Then he added, "After my death, you shall show him the whole castle, all the chambers, halls, and vaults, and all the treasures which lie therein. But the last chamber, in the long gallery, in which is the picture of the princess of the golden dwelling, you shall not show. If he sees that picture, he will fall violently in love with her, and will drop down in a swoon, and go through great danger for her sake. Therefore you must preserve him for that." And when Faithful John had once more given his promise to the old king about this, the king said no more, but laid his head on his pillow and died. When the old king had been carried to his grave, Faithful John told the young king all that he had promised his father on his deathbed, and said, "This I will assuredly perform, and be faithful to you as I have been faithful to him, even if it should cost me my life." When the mourning was over, Faithful John said to him, "It is now time that you should see about everywhere, up and down, and let him see all the riches and the magnificent apartments. Only there was one room which he did not open, that in which hung the dangerous picture. The picture was, however, so placed that when the door was opened, you looked straight on it. And it was so admirably painted that it seemed to breathe and live, and there was nothing more charming or more beautiful in the whole world." The young king, however, plainly remarked that Faithful John always walked past this one door and said, "Why do you never open this one for me?" "There is something within it," he replied, "which would terrify you." The king answered, "I have seen all the palace, and I will know what is in this room also." And he went and tried to break open the door by force. Then Faithful John held him back and said, "I promised your father before his death that you should not see that which is in this chamber. It might bring the greatest misfortune on you and me." "Ah, no," replied the young king. "If I do not go in, it will be certain. It will be my certain destruction. I should have no rest, or night, day or night, until I had seen it with my own eyes. I shall not leave the place now until you have unlocked the door." Then Faithful John saw there was no help for it now, and with a heavy heart and many sighs, sought out the key from the great bunch. When he had opened the door, he went in first, and thought by standing before him he could hide the portrait so that the king could not see it in front of him. But to what avail? The king stood on tiptoe and saw over his shoulder, and when he saw the portrait of the maiden, which was so magnificent, and shone with gold and precious stones, he fell fainting to the ground. Faithful John took him up, carried him to his bed, and sorrowfully thought, "The misfortune has befallen us. Lord God, what will be the end of it?" Then he strengthened him with wine until he came to himself again. The first words the king said were, "Ah, the beautiful portrait! Whose is it?" "That is the princess of the golden dwelling," answered Faithful John. Then the king continued, "My love for her is so great that if all the leaves on all the trees were tongues, they could not declare it. I will give my life to win her. You are my most faithful John. You must help me." The faithful servant considered within himself for a long time how to set about this matter, for it was difficult even to obtain a sight of the king's daughter. At length he thought of a way, and said to the king, "Everything which she has about her is of gold: tables, chairs, dishes, glasses, bowls, and household furniture. Among your treasures are 5 tons of gold. Let one of the goldsmiths of the kingdom work these up into all manner of vessels and utensils, into all kinds of birds, wild beasts, and strange animals, such as may please her, and all the goldsmiths to be brought to him, and they had to work night and day, until at last the most splendid things were prepared. When everything was stowed on board a ship, Faithful John put on the clothing of a merchant, and the king was forced to do the same in order to make himself quite unrecognizable. Then they sailed across the sea, and sailed on until they came to the town where the princess of the golden dwelling resided. Faithful John bade the king stay behind on the ship and wait for him. "Perhaps I shall bring the princess with me," said he. "Therefore see that everything is in order. Have the golden vessels set out and the whole ship decorated." Then he gathered together in his apron all kinds of gold things, went on shore, and walked straight to the royal palace. When he entered the courtyard of the palace, a beautiful girl was standing there by the well with 2 golden buckets in her hand, drawing water with them. And when she was turning around to carry away the sparkling water, she saw the stranger and asked who he was. So he answered, "I am a merchant," and opened his apron and let her look in. Then she cried, "Oh, what beautiful gold things!" And she put her pails down and looked at the golden wares one after another. Then said the girl, "The princess must see these. She has such great pleasure in golden things that she will buy all you have." She took him by the hand and led him upstairs, for she was the waiting maid. When the king's daughter saw the wares, she was delighted, and said, "They are so beautifully worked that I will buy them all from you." But Faithful John said, "I am only the servant of a rich merchant. The things I have here are not to be compared with those my master has in his ship. They are the most beautiful and valuable things that have ever been made in gold." She wanted to have everything brought to her there, but he said there are so many of them that it would take a great many days to do that, and so many rooms would be required to exhibit them, that your house is not big enough. Then her curiosity and longing were still more excited, until at last she said, "Take me to the ship. I will go there myself and behold the treasures of your master." On this Faithful John was quite delighted, and led her to the ship. When the king saw her, he perceived that her beauty was even greater than the picture had represented it to be, and thought no other than that his heart would burst. Then she got into the ship, and the king led her within. Faithful John, however, remained behind with the pilot,
and ordered the ship to be pushed off, saying, "Set all sails till it flies like a bird in the air." So they're kidnapping her. They're kidnapping her. They kidnapped her. Yep. Okay. Inside, however, the king showed her the golden vessels, every one of them, and the wild beasts and strange animals. Many hours went by while she was seeing everything, and in her delight, she did not observe the ship was sailing away. After she had looked at the last piece, she thanked the merchant and wanted to go home. But when she came to the side of the ship, she saw it was on the deep sea, far from land, and hurrying onwards with all sails set. "Ah!" she cried in her alarm, "I am betrayed! I am carried away and have fallen into the power of a merchant. I would rather die." The king, however, seized her hand and said, "I am not a merchant, I am a king, and of no worse origin than you are. And if I have carried you away with subtlety, that has come to pass because of my exceeding great love for you. The first time I looked at your portrait, I fell fainting to the ground." When the Princess of Golden Dwelling heard that, she was comforted, and her heart was inclined unto him, so she willingly consented to be his wife. This would not happen in real life. That is still kidnapping. But that is fine. That's whatever, I guess. It so happened, however, while they were sailing onwards over the deep sea, the faithful John, who was sitting on the forepart of the vessel making music, saw 3 ravens in the air, which came flying towards them. As at this he stopped playing, and listened to what they were saying to each other. For that he well understood. One cried, "Oh, there he is, carrying home the Princess of the Golden Dwelling." "Yes," replied the second, "but he has not got her yet," said the third. "But he has got her. She is sitting beside him in the ship." Then the first began and cried, "What good will that do him? When they reach land, a chestnut horse will leap forward to meet him, and the prince will want to mount it. But if he does that, it will run away with him, and rise up into the air with him, and he will never see his maiden again." Said the second, "But is there no escape?" "Oh, yes. If anyone else gets on it swiftly, and takes out the pistol which must be in its holster, and shoots the horse dead with it, the young king is saved. But who knows that? And whoever does know it, and tells it to him, will be turned to stone from toe to knee." Then said the second, "I know more than that. Even if the horse is killed, the young king will still not keep his bride. When they go into the castle together, a wrought bridal garment will be lying there in a dish, and looking as if it were woven of gold and silver. It is, however, nothing but sulphur and pitch, and if he puts it on, it will burn him to the very bone and marrow." Said the third, "Is there no escape at all?" "Oh, yes," replied the second. "If anyone with gloves on seizes the garment and throws it into the fire and burns it, the young king will be saved. But what good is that? Whoever knows it and tells it to him, half his body will become stone from knee to the heart." Then said the third, "I know more still. Even if the bridal garment be burnt, the young king will still not have his bride. After the wedding, when the dancing begins and the young queen is dancing, she will suddenly turn pale and fall down as if dead. And if someone does not lift her up and suck 3 drops of blood from her right breast and spit them out again, she will die. But if anyone knows that, or to declare it, he would become stone from the crown of his head to the sole of his foot." When the ravens had spoken of this together, they flew onwards, and faithful John had well understood everything, but from that time forth he became quiet and sad. For if he concealed what he had heard, his master would suffer, and if he revealed it to him, he himself must sacrifice his life. At length, however, he said to himself, "I will save my master, even if it brings destruction on myself." When therefore they came to shore, all happened as had been foretold by the ravens, and a magnificent chestnut horse sprang forward. "Good," said the king, "he shall carry me to my palace," and was about to mount it when faithful John got before him, jumped quickly on it, drew the pistol out of its holster, and shot the horse. Then the other attendants of the king, who all were not very fond of Faithful John, cried, "How shameful to kill the beautiful animal that was to have carried the king to his palace!" But the king said, "Hold your peace and leave him alone. He is my most faithful John. Who knows what good may come of his actions?" They went to the palace, and in the hall there stood a dish, and inside lay the bridal garment, looking no otherwise than if it were made of gold and silver. The king went towards it and was about to take hold of it, but Faithful John pushed him away, seized it with gloves on, and carried it quickly to the fire and burned it. The other attendants again began to murmur and said, "Behold, now he is even burning the king's bridal garment." But the young king said, "Who knows what good he may have done? Leave him alone. He is my most faithful John." And now the wedding was solemnized. The dance began, and the bride also took part in it. Then Faithful John was watchful, and looked into their face, and suddenly she turned pale and fell to the ground as if she were dead. At this he hastily ran to her, lifted her up, and bore her into a chamber. Then he laid her down and knelt and sucked 3 drops of blood from her right breast and spat them out. Immediately she breathed again and recovered herself. But the young king had seen this, and being ignorant why Faithful John had done it, was angry and cried, "Throw him into a dungeon." Next morning Faithful John was condemned and led to the gallows, and when he stood up high and was about to be executed, he said, "Everyone who has to die is permitted before his end to make one last speech. May I too claim the right?" "Yes," answered the king, "it shall be granted." "Then," said Faithful John, "I am unjustly condemned and have always been true to you." And he related how he had hearkened to the conversation of the ravens when at sea, and now he had been obliged to do all these things in order to save his master. Then cried the king, "Oh, my most faithful John, pardon, pardon, bring him down." But as Faithful John spoke the last word, he had fallen down lifeless and become stone. At this the king and queen suffered great anguish, and the king said, "Ah, how ill I have requited great fealty. And ordered the stone figure to be taken up and placed in his bedroom beside his bed. As often as he looked at it, he wept and said, 'Ah, if I could bring you back to life again, my most faithful John.' Some time passed, and the queen bore twins, 2 sons who grew fast and were her delight. Once, when the queen was at church, and the 2 children were sitting playing beside their father, the latter, full of grief again, looked at the stone figure, sighed, and said, 'Ah, if I could but bring you to life again, my most faithful John.' Then the stone began to speak and said, 'You can bring me to life again, if you will sacrifice what is dearest to you.' Then cried the king, 'I will give you everything I have in the world for you.' The stone continued, 'If you will cut off the heads of your 2 children with your own hand, and sprinkle me with their blood, I shall be restored to life.' The king was terrified when he heard that he himself must kill his dearest children, but he thought of Faithful John's fidelity, and how he had died for him, drew his sword, and with his own hand cut off the children's heads. And when he had smeared the stone with their blood, life returned to it, and Faithful John stood once more, safe and healthy before him. He said to the king, 'Your fidelity shall not go unrewarded,' and took the heads of the children, put them on again, and rubbed the wounds with their blood. I wish they became whole again immediately, and jumped about, and went on playing as if nothing had happened. When the king was full of joy, and when he saw the queen coming, he hid Faithful John and the 2 children in the great cupboard. When she entered, he said to her, 'Have you been praying in the church?' 'Yes,' answered she, 'but I have constantly been thinking of Faithful John, and what misfortune had befallen him through us.' Then said he, 'Dear wife, we can give him his life again, but it will cost us our 2 little sons, whom we must sacrifice.' The queen turned pale, and her heart was full of terror. But she said, 'We owe it to him, for his great fidelity.' Then the king rejoiced that she thought as he had thought, and went and opened the cupboard, and brought forth Faithful John and the children, and said, 'God be praised, he is saved, and we have our little sons again also,' and then told her how everything had occurred.
Then they dwelt together in much happiness until their death. Alright, that is my first reading stream concluded. We read 26 pages. Oh, well, 26 and a half. That was 6 stories, so I'll probably try to do more next time. I've just been talking a lot today, and I can already tell my voice is taking a turn. So I think I should get off for now. But thank you everyone for joining. Thank you everyone for being here. I like this reading series. Thank you! Yeah, I hope everyone likes it. It's here basically for people to fall asleep to. And seeing that Nuggy is not commenting, I'm going to assume he also fell asleep as he said he would. But yeah, my voice is already failing me a little bit. It's cutting out. So I should get to bed. Again, I'll try to read more stories next time. I'll be doing this, I think, twice a month, maybe more if more people are interested in it. And always on a Friday. Good night. You also have a great night. Thank you so much for joining, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you liked it. And I hope I will see you all next time for more Grimm's Fairy Tales. I put a little sticker in it, so I know exactly where we left off. Yes, I put a little sticker. Okay. Good night.